One arrogant manager. One calm black woman. What looked like an ordinary coffee order turned into the end of his career. The late afternoon sun poured through the cafe windows, painting the polished tables with streaks of gold. The air was thick with the comforting aroma of roasted coffee and warm pastries, the kind that made strangers linger longer than they meant to. The soft hiss of the milk steamer blended with gentle laughter, creating a rhythm that felt almost musical. Then, the door opened with a quiet chime. A black woman stepped inside, mid-30s, composed, wearing a tailored beige suit that caught the sunlight just enough to hint at quiet refinement. She moved with the kind of grace that didn't ask for attention but naturally drew it. A small leather folder rested in her hand, the kind carried by someone who lived in details and decisions. She paused for a moment, taking in the cafe, the rows of potted plants near the window, the chatter behind the counter, the barista's tired smile. Her eyes, calm yet observant, seemed to scan everything with purpose. To everyone else, she was just another customer looking for a cup of coffee. But the way she looked around, too focused, too deliberate, whispered that she was here for more than a drink. Something unspoken lingered in the air, quiet but waiting. The woman stepped up to the counter, her tone gentle but assured. "Good afternoon. Could I please have a cappuccino with oat milk?" The manager barely looked up. A man in his 40s with rolled sleeves and an easy arrogance leaned against the counter, still half engaged in conversation with the barista. His eyes flicked over her suit, her skin, then back to the register. A smirk tugged at his lips. "You sure you can afford that?" he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's not exactly cheap here." The words dropped heavy into the room. The chatter stopped. Even the hum of the espresso machine seemed to fade for a heartbeat. The woman blinked once, not out of anger, but disbelief. Her lips parted slightly, the way one does when faced with something too absurd to deserve a reaction. A quiet sadness flickered in her eyes, but it disappeared just as quickly as it came. The manager chuckled under his breath. "We've had some people come in, trying to look fancy. Happens all the time." A few customers shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to hear. The woman's voice was calm, almost tender. "I see. Maybe I'll just look around first." She stepped aside, her face serene, yet behind her gaze, a quiet storm was beginning to form. The woman moved to a small table by the window, her expression unreadable. The late afternoon light framed her silhouette in soft gold, catching the edge of her calm features. She placed her folder neatly beside her and took out her phone. Her fingers began to move across the screen, slow, deliberate, precise. No one could see what she was typing, but the air around her seemed to still. Behind the counter, the barista leaned toward the manager, voice low. "You shouldn't have said that, Mark. That was out of line," Mark snorted, waving her off. "Oh, please. She's not coming back. People like that never do. Probably just trying to look important." The barista's eyes flickered with unease. Something about the woman didn't fit that description. She wasn't flustered or angry. She was too calm. Minutes slipped by, and the cafe's rhythm began to resume, until the door opened again. A delivery man stepped inside holding a sealed envelope. "Delivery for the manager," he said. Mark frowned, wiping his hands. "Yeah, that's me." He tore it open and read the letter aloud under his breath. His smile faltered. "Official business license review? Inspection today?" He looked up, confused. The woman by the window didn't move. She simply crossed one leg over the other and watched. 20 minutes passed, heavy with unease. The cafe's cheerful rhythm had shifted, the hum of conversation replaced by the tense clicking of pens and the shuffling of papers. 2 men in gray suits entered, flashing identification badges. Each carried a clipboard and a practiced air of authority. "Health and compliance inspection," one of them announced. The barista blinked, startled. The manager forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. They moved efficiently, checking the fridge temperature, the food storage, the sanitation logs. Every scribble of their pen seemed to drain the color from Mark's face. When one inspector mentioned a formal complaint from the corporate oversight office, his hand trembled slightly. The woman by the window finally stood. Her steps were unhurried, her presence suddenly commanding the entire room. "Gentlemen," she said softly, "thank you for coming so quickly." Mark turned sharply. "Wait, you called them?" She met his gaze, calm, unwavering. "I didn't have to," she replied. "I'm the regional director of the company that owns this franchise." Silence fell like glass shattering. The barista gasped. You're Ms. Avery Johnson?" Avery nodded once, her voice low but firm. "You judged me before you even listened. That tells me everything I need to know." The inspectors exchanged knowing looks and quietly placed a temporarily closed for review notice on the counter. The cafe had fallen completely silent. The inspectors gathered their papers. The barista stood frozen behind the counter, and the manager, once smug and self-assured, now looked small, lost behind his own arrogance. His lips moved as if to speak, but no words came. Avery didn't gloat. She didn't smirk or savor his humiliation. Instead, she reached for her leather folder, slid her phone inside, and lifted her gaze to meet his one last time. Her voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "Your license is suspended pending review," she said quietly. "Perhaps this will give you time to think about how you treat people." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hiss of the espresso machine winding down, as if even it was exhaling with relief. Avery turned toward the door, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. The afternoon light had deepened to gold, spilling across the windows in long, fading rays. As she stepped outside, her reflection shimmered briefly on the glass door before disappearing, just as the barista reached up and flipped the closed sign. Avery paused on the sidewalk, breathing in the cool air. There was no triumph in her eyes, only calm resolve. This wasn't victory. It was justice wrapped in grace. Respect costs nothing, but losing it can cost you everything.